great
Hi.
pleasure for me introduce you to the second conference
No
of
puedo
supervision
escuchar
enfoque.
nada.
Several months ago have passed since I contact you, and we're finally here today. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. And can I first apologize for being a very stereotypical English person and not being able to speak other languages. I was watching the end of the last presentation and felt very frustrated because I could read little bits, but not enough.
Okay.
Okay.
Mónica es coach, supervisora con enfoque existencial, psicoterapeuta, consultora y formadora en gestión y liderazgo. Ha trabajado en la Universidad Regent de Londres y ha impartido cursos en Singapur, Rumanía, Letonia, Sudáfrica y actualmente en el Jesus College de la Universidad de Oxford, con un enfoque filosófico y psicológico que enfatiza la importancia de los valores. Trabaja con empresas globales y particulares como consultora y coach ejecutiva y ha escrito libros sobre coaching, mediación, liderazgo y cuestiones existenciales, que es lo que aquí nos trae especialmente. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Gracias, Chris.
Shall I try and share my screen now? And can people see that?
Not yet.
No, not yet.
Okay.
You're a co-host, so as a co-host, you can share your
Yeah.
presentation.
Are you seeing it now?
No.
Not yet, Monica, but somebody will be sharing.
Okay. I've got it up on mine, but you can't see it.
¿Está como co-host?
¿Sí?
Tenemos el backup.
Yo puedo apoyarla y no.
Vale. Wait a second, because Marcela helped you in the shared presentation.
Okay.
Sense, okay.
Things of direct.
Can you see it?
Yes, we
Yes,
can
perfect.
you see.
Okay, great. Okay. Well, I'm going to talk to you about supervision, like everybody else, but I'm not going to concentrate on what supervision is because you've already been through that. So I'm going to perhaps introduce you to a different way of looking at supervision, which is through the existential lens. Okay, is that going to be translated?
Yeah, it's translated, but on the other channel, so you can keep talking. Just go slowly so the person can translate you, but you will not hear the translation.
Okay, I'll go slowly and just leave space. So the slide that I'm showing now shows a favorite quote of mine, which is about coaching, but I think the same applies to supervision. Coaching is not about teaching the caterpillar how to fly. It's about creating an opening for it to see the possibility. And I think that's the same with supervision. I don't see myself as somebody who's teaching when I'm supervising. I see myself as being in a joint journey with the coach to look at all the possible ways of seeing the work with the client. Coaching can be a very lonely activity. We're there on our own with our client. We are reliant on our own knowledge, our experience, and our intuition. And that can feel really isolating at times, which is why supervision is so important. Supervision allows us to go beyond our own knowledge. So as a coach, I bring to my client everything I've learned, everything that I've experienced, and also my imagination and intuition. But supervision gives us that wonderful opportunity to have more than one mind explore the possibilities together. So that's true of all kinds of supervision, whatever particular approach you bring to it. My own approach, and I work mainly within the business field, so I work mainly with global leaders and executives, which might seem strange to bring an existential philosophical view to that client group, but it's one that they're increasingly interested in. So I will talk quite a bit about the existential. I haven't got time to talk very much about the phenomenological aspect, but put simply, phenomenology just means taking an interest in what's going on in the room, in the here and now, between you and the client. And for a supervisor, you've got all three within that triad. You've got the supervisor, what they're feeling, thinking. You've got the coach, what they're feeling and thinking, and you've got their client. So I'll start by taking you through some key existential elements. Can I just check whether I'm going at the right speed for people?
Yeah, it seems you are. You need to let Marcela know when you want to go to the next slide, because we are still in the cover of the slide.
Oh, okay. So if we can move on from the one that says existential elements, and you should see a chart there, yes? Which shows the focus of the existential supervisor. Can people see that?
What is exactly what we want us to see, Monica?
You should see a slide that says the focus of the existential supervisor is multi-layered.
Yes, we are seeing that now.
Great, okay. So it's not different from any other supervisor in many ways, in that it will take account of everything that any supervisor will take account of. So it's looking at ethical considerations. So it's looking at how professional the coach is being, whether they're holding boundaries, whether they are working within their capabilities, whether they are able to see when they need to maybe refer on or get more advice or seek more knowledge. But as well as that, if you're coming from an existential point of view, you are bringing in some key existential thinking. And these are shown in the circles. So you'll be looking, and I'll say more about these as we go on, but you'll be looking at things like uncertainty, time, the emotional aspects, anxiety, how the supervisor and supervisee are relating to one another, how the coach is looking and relating to the client. So if we could move on to the next slide. Supervision is often...
Monica, we are, for some reason, Marcela is having problems also sharing the slides, so we do not have any slides. So people are going to follow you by what you're saying, okay? Just to keep that in mind.
Oh, okay. So they can't see any slides at all.
I don't know, Marcela, can you make it work? Are you having some challenges too?
No estoy teniendo problemas para... Sí, dale.
Porque no lo estamos viendo la presentación.
¿Querés compartirlo con alguno de nosotros, Marcela? A ver si podemos avanzar, así te ayudamos.
Él está buscando parte. Ah, perfecto, Pat. Gracias.
Okay, should I just continue?
We're trying to figure out how to get this work, Monica, for you.
Oh, okay.
Who was sharing. Plan A was you, didn't work. Plan B, the second person, she was having some personal affairs. So now we're going to plan C.
Okay. Fingers crossed.
Yes. So who is doing that now? ¿Quién va a compartir ahora la presentación?
Pat. Multitasking. Our dear Pat. Ahí se ve.
Se ve perfecto.
Se ve perfecto. Ahí.
Es la próxima slide, Pat, la que queremos. Ahora, esta es la que está explicando ella, el foco de la supervisión existencial.
Ahí está. Perfecto.
Mónica, can you
Yes.
see it? You should be able to see it too. Can you see it, Mónica?
I've got my own, I can only see my own slides at the moment for some
You
reason.
need to stop that so you can see what's happening. You get to see the participants too on the side if you want to. Yes, we can see you. We can see that you're moving the cursor now. So here we are. Okay, we can continue now.
Okay. Okay. I shall. So if we can move on from that slide. Okay, thank you very much. We're there now, I think. So some people think of supervision in a very scientific way, a very technical way, and use quite a lot of techniques, and will share techniques with coaches for them to use with their clients. If you're thinking of it in a more existential way, then we see it much more as being about an art rather than a science. We're very much interested in the relationship between the individuals rather than any techniques. So it's a kind of slightly different way of seeing it. It doesn't mean that we don't use techniques or, bring in psychometrics. We might do that. And in fact, quite a lot of my supervisees are not existentially trained. So they will be using quite a lot of techniques, and they've chosen to come for existential supervision to get a different take on things. Okay, so if we move on to the next slide, please. So I, as an existential supervisor, I'm more interested in presence and curiosity. So I am wanting to try and engage the coach in being extremely curious about their coachee, and to see them as a unique individual. So existentially, we see everyone as having a unique way of being in the world, while at the same time, we all share a lot of human givens. We all are born alone, we die alone, we suffer from anxieties, we have to deal with uncertainty. There are a lot of things we share, but really what we're concerned with is the essence and the skill of being with and understanding the worldview of the client. So if we can move on to the next slide, please. So quite often we've learned a lot. We've gone on our coaching training, we've learned an awful lot. And when I have new supervisees, they are full of what they've learned, which is great. And they're very passionate, which again is also great. But they have to do some unlearning, because what we're looking at existentially is that we try and fit our knowledge and skills to the individual in front of us. We're not saying we will do the same thing with everybody. So we want our coaches to really look at what's going on for the individual and not to go in with a preset way of being with different people. Okay. So if you could move on, please. If we move to the next slide. So it's very much, the existential approach is very much about dialogue and really trying to find out what is really important to the people we're working with. So it's not about explanation. So as a supervisor, I don't see my role as explaining things to a coach, but to explore together the experiences that they are having with their client, experiences I might have had with clients that we can share together. So if we move on, please. Okay. So Yalom is an important existential thinker. And what he is saying is that we don't want standardization. And this is really what I was saying before, that it's important that as a coach, we go particularly into that first session with a blank canvas, that we're going to create a model of coaching together with our client. We don't go in with a set way of working or with a set list of things we're going to work through. Okay, next slide, please. So I'm going to take you through what some of the existential givens are. And by that, I mean the things that we all share. So although we're wonderfully unique, we're all rich and diverse, we all bring different experiences into our interactions with everybody, whether it's professionally or personally, there are things that we all share, which are termed existential givens. So if we could move on to the next slide, please. The first one is that we all exist in an anxious state. At the moment, the world is making us even more anxious. There are all sorts of madnesses going on around us, and that makes life quite difficult at times. And it's important for the supervisor to work with the supervisee to look at what anxieties they have got. And quite often, particularly young coaches, will try and appear very confident and as if they've no anxiety. They get shocked when I say to them that after decades of working as a coach, I'm nervous before I go into a first session with a new client. And I think I should be, because that person is precious. Their experiences are precious. And it's important that I recognize that for them, this is an anxious time. And it is for me, because I want to do well as a coach. And all of these things would be explored within the supervisory relationship. As a supervisor, I would be helping the coach to build trust with their client, so that there is a way in which the client's nervousness, the client's anxieties, the client's fears And the client's failures are all safely explored within the coaching space. There's also the need, I think, for us to be careful to really be honest about whether the anxiety that might be expressed by a client is one that a coach can deal with. Sometimes we have clients who are bringing into coaching work that should be done in therapy. And it's part of my job as a supervisor to just check in with the coach whether they are dealing with things that they shouldn't be dealing with and that they should be signposting the client to different help. Thank you. If we can move on to the next slide, please. Okay. One of the tenets of existential philosophy is that human beings seek meaning. And quite often when a client comes into coaching, it's because they've lost meaning. They might have lost meaning in aspects of their life, but also in aspects of their profession. And so what the supervisor will be helping the coach to look at is what ways can they explore the importance of meaning with their client. I know for myself that when I've been in jobs where I've felt a great deal of meaning and passion when I went into those jobs, and somehow the meaning might change because there's new bosses, new ways of seeing things. This is a moment when clients quite often seek some coaching. I've lost the meaning in what I'm doing. Might be in their professional life or their personal life. And there is just a set of the kind of things that a supervisee would discuss with their supervisor in an existential context. So if we move on to the next, please, next slide. Another aspect of existential thinking is the importance of being authentic, being true to oneself. And when we're feeling that we're not in the right environment, then actually this causes a great deal of anxiety. And often clients bring to their coaches issues of authenticity. How can they stay true to their values in a context that might be changing and might mean that the values of the organization they're working for, or even the family they're in, are in conflict with their own value systems. So the coach would actually be working to check out to what extent the client can feel that they can be true to themselves, or where tensions are. And the supervisor is helping the client to look at the material that the supervisee is bringing to see, is there an issue here about authenticity for the client? Is this something that needs exploring? So if we can move on to the next slide. Another aspect that's very important to existential thinkers is the issue of freedom and responsibility. And so the supervisor will be encouraging the coach to look with the client about to what extent they are owning their own freedom, how much they're taking responsibility for their decisions. Because clients will often say, I can't do anything, I'm stuck. We can always do something. And if we choose to stay stuck, we're still choosing to do something. So we can't really say we've got no choice, we're stuck. We've always got a choice. And the supervisor will also be helping their supervisee to look at whether they are taking too much responsibility for the client's actions rather than facilitating the client's freedom. So if we move on to the next slide. We will also be looking at relatedness. And this is about how you're working actually with the client. Is there tensions going on? Are you picking up everything that the client is expressing, not just verbally, but in their body language? And how is the client working with others? As I say, I work primarily within the business system. So a lot of the issues that are brought to coaching are interrelational. They're how people are getting on with the board, how they're getting on with their line manager. And so these areas are very important to bring into the coaching conversation. So if we can have the next slide, please. Existentialism is often seen in quite a negative way because it talks quite a bit about death and dying, and some people see it as nihilistic. It isn't. But it is important in the coaching conversation that time and temporality is expressed and looked at. And again, the supervisee will be maybe asking some of these questions about what is going on in the relationship between the coach and their client.
Monique, can you slow down a little bit? It's difficult. You're going a little bit fast for the people who's translating you. So you need to stop every minute to give time to the other person to translate you. Thank you.
Okay, fine. So for all of us, time is an issue. I'm talking too fast. That's about time. But within anything that the client brings to the coaching relationship, it will be within a set context. So even when we are contracting for our coaching sessions, we need to be aware of how many sessions that might take. Usually people will limit the number of sessions in coaching. So the whole area of thinking about time, timing, pacing is important. When you're ready, we can move to the next slide. One of the things that most human beings struggle with is that we live with uncertainty. And quite often people will come to coaching because they want certainty, and the coach may think it's their job to give them certainty. And existentially, that's not the case. Existentially, it is about owning the fact that the world is not certain, that we can't offer the truth, we can't offer the answer, and that actually what the relationship about is exploring the possibilities and coming to terms with the fact that we can't guarantee anything. This is quite hard in the business world because it's a world of 5-year plans, strategies, which act as though things don't change, as if the world is certain. And the one thing that COVID has shown us is that that's not the case. And we see changes all the time. So if we move on, please. Our values and beliefs, that we need as a coach to understand the core values of the people we're working with. If we don't, we won't be asking the right questions and we won't be hearing the right answers. So it's very important that this doesn't get missed out and that we're working on a very transactional level. We need to go beneath that and find out what is important. And the supervisor will help the coach to do this by asking questions similar to those on the screen. Okay, and we can move on to the next slide, please. Some coaches, that certainly supervisees that I've worked with, do not like to see emotion from their clients. It frightens them. So if a client gets very upset or very animated, the coach may try and calm it all down. Emotions are a gift. They're telling us something. So it's important that they don't get ignored, and that the supervisee helps a coach to work with the emotions. It's not to dig for emotions, but it's not to ignore emotions that are there. So emotions are a gift to a coach. They're telling us a lot of things that maybe the client finds difficult to put into words. And they may be shown more by their body language than by what they're saying. Okay, we can move to the next slide. It's important that we don't just ignore any paradoxes or ambiguities in what the client is saying. And so the supervisor will be helping the coach to look for any paradoxes. So quite often, if I'm coaching somebody who's maybe been off with stress, they will say things like, you know, I must get back to work. I want to get back to work. But at the same time, will be telling me that they feel sick at the thought of going back to work. And some coaches will just ignore that. But certainly existentially, I would be wanting to explore, well, how can we make this work? On the one hand, you want to be back in the workspace. In another, it's causing you distress. So a supervisor will be trying to help the coach not to skip over any ambiguities, but to explore them further. So if we could move on. Thank you. And the next slide, I'm going to talk about the existential dimensions. So if we have the next slide, please. This is just a representation of the fact that we live in and we exist in different dimensions. We have a personal dimension, a social dimension, a psychological dimension, and a spiritual dimension. And all of those things are the richness that make us who we are. So as a supervisor, I might be asking the coach to tell me more about what they've learned about how their client is in relation to the physical environment or to their social environment, and to see whether any of these are in tension with one another. So it acts as a kind of little map to just check out the information that the coach is getting from their client and whether there are real gaps. You know, do they know, when I say spiritual, I don't mean religious, do they feel they have a real understanding in the holistic way of who they are working with? So if we move on, please, to the next slide. I'm just going to briefly take you through a little bit of a case study because a lot of that has been quite theoretical. So the supervisor will work with the coach in exploring the themes that are coming out. Is there an existential theme there that is causing the client to bring a dilemma into the coaching space? Is it that their values are feeling attacked? Is it that or they don't feel they can be authentic and real? So there's all of these issues going on which the supervisor would help the coach to explore. So if we move on to the next slide, please. This is just an example which shows a client who was struggling really with work-life balance. And this explains how those aspects of what I showed on the previous slide, the different areas in which we operate, how they worked for him. So this first slide is what he brought into the coaching at the beginning. And if we move to the next slide, this shows the movement that was made through 6 coaching sessions. So
Sorry. 5 minutes to finish, please.
okay, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. That is the final slide. So. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Anything else you want to say before you go? If people want to find you somewhere, you want to share?
Yes, I think the next slide has got my email address on it. I'm very happy for people to contact me because I know we've gone through this at pace. And thank you again for inviting me.
Thank you for joining us. It was great to have you, and thank you for your patience with the technological part. But
It's okay. It's always a challenge.
we were able to make it work thanks to Pat. She was multitasking, translating for you and sharing the slides. So thank you, Pat.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Monica.